How are you, folks? Dave Brown back here with the New Populist. Thank you again for joining me. Very interesting last 24 hours with RFK Jr. coming out and endorsing Donald Trump. Not something I actually anticipated. I thought that he would drop out the race and sort of stay neutral, not endorse either party. So when he did endorse Trump, I was pretty shocked. And so I just want to go back and cover RFK since he entered the race and sort of his trajectory and how he got where he is right now. So when RFK Jr. first showed up, my first impression was, hey, I like this guy, interesting ideas. He is going after the COVID regime and Dr. Fauci. So anybody who rips apart Dr. Fauci is good in my book. And yes, I had self-serving reasons for liking RFK Jr. as well, because initially he was pulling votes away from Biden in the polling as he was hurting Democrats. So the more sense he was making and the more he was appealing to Democrats, that was good for Republicans and good for Trump. So for that self-serving reason, I was very happy to see RFK Jr. in the race early on. And the media initially was giving him decent coverage. He was getting interviews everywhere. But then there was a turn. And this is when he showed up in front of Congress and was testifying. And he had made comments where he said that COVID-19 seemed to be engineered. And if it was engineered, it's interesting because there were two population groups that seemed to be less affected by COVID-19. And those two groups were the Han Chinese and Ashkenazi Jews. Now, when he said that, he was immediately attacked as being an anti-Semite. I mean, they were ripping him apart. And what I find interesting is that they focus on the Ashkenazi Jew part, but he also had said Han Chinese, and that part was completely ignored. So he wasn't trying to blame any sort of group. He was just pointing out what the data seemed to suggest. But as you know, when you are talking about the Jewish community, you have to be very careful because people are very quick to call you anti-Semitic. So he made those comments and immediately, again, he was being ripped apart and the media just started to ignore him. And so to try to do a mea culpa, he met with Rabbi Shmuley, who is one of the most disgusting human beings I've ever seen, a real scumbag and a scoundrel. And he went to Rabbi Shmuley. He said, I'm sorry. I'm a huge supporter of the Jewish community, and I'm a huge supporter of Israel. I'm supporting a huge supporter of what's going on as far as taking on the Hamas. And so he went crawling over to some of these Jewish leaders, begging for forgiveness. And it didn't really work. Once he was put in that bad person category, he was done. And he sort of, ever since then, has been trying to get back into the limelight, trying to get more media attention. But again, the media had turned on him and he had been labeled an anti-Semite. And despite everything he did to try to make up for it, it was sort of over. So that's where he's been for the last several months. And not only that, there were also hit pieces coming out on him. One talking about his aggressiveness with a nanny years ago, and a recent story where he said he found a dead bear cub on the side of the road. He put it in his vehicle, but then he had a dinner in New York City, and he said, oh my gosh, I have this bear cub in my car. It's dead. What do I do with it? And he put it in Central Park and staged some sort of hit and run with a bicycle. And it was actually on the news. And it's funny because the news is reporting it and they're trying to figure out who killed this bear. And apparently it was RFK Jr. who had put that bear there. And this was 10 years ago when RFK Jr. was in his late 50s. So that whole story was very, very weird. RFK Jr. is a eccentric guy. And all these stories coming out, again, wasn't helping him. And his poll numbers were, compared to when he first started, were sort of dropping off. So the Democrat Party, the media, had done a very, very good job at, tamping down RFK Jr. And toward the end, it seemed that he was actually pulling more from Trump than from Democrats, which is a problem because RFK Jr., as he's expressed his opinions recently, has said that he has nothing to do or wants nothing to do with the Democrat Party because they have completely rejected him and completely changed from the party that he knew when he was a kid. Certainly not the party of John F. Kennedy Jr. or JFK or RFK. So the media and Democrats have done a great job of really going after him and separating him from Democrats. So recently, obviously, Trump picked J.D. Vance for his VP. But before he did that, there were people suggesting that maybe Trump would pick RFK Jr. I know Brett Weinstein came out and said that, hey, pick RFK Jr. That's what's good for the country. I never thought that was particularly a good idea. It was a little alluring, but the problem is, while I do like RFK Jr. on several positions, at the end of the day, he's actually still fairly progressive. And for a Republican candidate to make him the VP, knowing that he has only 4 years left if Trump wins, you're basically platforming RFK Jr. for president in 2028. And if you're a Republican, if you're a conservative, do you really want to put RFK Jr. in that spot? Again, RFK Jr., very good on certain issues, but there are a lot of issues where he is fairly left-wing, and I'm not sure that would have been a good idea. Now, if you say, Dave, RFK Jr. or Nikki Haley, I'm going RFK Jr. RFK Jr., Ron DeSantis. I guess I lean DeSantis. RFK Jr., Rand Paul. I'm going Rand Paul. Not that Rand Paul has any chance. So RFK Jr. Potentially being set up for president isn't a terrible idea, but for Republicans, for Trump to do that, that would be a big problem. And it would also might dampen things with the Republican establishment, who already doesn't like him very much. And if he does that, Trump has to worry about all the things behind the scenes, all the backstabbing, all the undermining, and picking RFK Jr. would just take people like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and others to really just scheme even more than they already do right now to undermine his agenda and kneecap him while being president. So I never thought it would be a good idea that Trump make RFK Jr. VP. So going with J.D. Vance was the better choice, although Vance is really taking a beating from the media. And I hope people realize he's a good dude and don't fall for the media hype. They were always going to beat him up. And I think over time he will, shine more and show himself to be a reasonable pick. And I think people also sometimes overvalue a VP pick. Ultimately, people are voting for Trump. So this brings us to RFK Jr.'s endorsement of Trump. And again, I never thought it would happen. And I think this is actually obviously good for Trump because it gives Trump the rub, gives him some of the voters that were going to vote for RFK Jr., but again, without him actually being the VP, which platforms him for 2028. And if RFK Jr. is working for the head of the Department of Health and Human Services, AG, fantastic. He needs to have a very narrow role. We don't want him to broadly influence the platform, again, because he is fairly progressive. But if he can be put on a specific task, that is fantastic because he is extremely intelligent, extremely detailed, and clearly extremely motivated to make a difference. So if Trump does win and he puts RFK Jr. somewhere, This is going to be fantastic. He will really dig in. And as far as RFK Jr. making this decision, when he, looking back at him and some of the things he's done in the past, I mentioned earlier the Bear Cub and some of his activities, his drug use. I was, this guy's eccentric. He's okay, but maybe is he too weird? What's going on with him? Do I trust him? But watching him make the decision to endorse Trump, it really did take a big set of balls, because his wife, for example, Cheryl Hines, huge Democrat. Obviously worked with Larry David with Curb Your Enthusiasm on that show. He's obviously a huge Democrat, huge establishment Democrat supporter. And RFK Jr. had mentioned a year ago that if he endorsed Trump, his wife would leave him. And I don't think he was actually exaggerating. There was some truth in his voice when he said that. Also, of course, his family are all Democrats. Most of the Kennedy family are still in full support of the Democrat Party, despite the fact that the party has gone off the rails. And so for RFK Jr. to make this endorsement at his age, that his wife clearly wouldn't want, his family wouldn't want, that did take a pretty big set, because he is now persona non grata for Democrats, the left, Hollywood, the liberal circles, and he is being, some of the Twitter attacks from people that were his friend at some point, they're really, really nasty in going after him. Keith Olbermann, for example, I won't repeat what he said, but using four-letter words to attack RFK Jr. Of course, we know Keith Olbermann is a mental case. He has mental issues and should be ignored, but he does have a pretty big microphone there on X, and him, along with other people, are really just trashing RFK Jr. So for RFK Jr. at this point in his life to do this and to put that target on his back, I have to say, tip my hat to the guy and say, I didn't think you would do it. You did do it, so God bless you. I do think this will help the ticket. This will help Trump, and maybe help us get us over that line, because this election will be close. You watch Kamala and you say, how is this possible? This person who is devoid of any real substance. I've never heard Kamala actually string together any really intelligent thought on any issue, whether it's the economy, banking, foreign policy, absolutely nothing. Yet for some reason, she's a viable candidate who is apparently tied with Donald Trump in the polls. It blows my mind that this person who is so incompetent, who's so brain dead, could actually be in the position she's in. But here she is, and God help us if she does win. So thank you, RFK, for coming out, endorsing Donald Trump, putting that bullseye on your back, and hopefully we get across the finish line. Hopefully the deep state, the CIA, doesn't come after Trump again, or RFK Jr. Who knows? We have, 10 weeks left? If the polling starts to shift in favor of Trump, what might they do to prevent Trump from getting into office? And people mentioning RFK Jr. as director of the CIA, that has to frighten the CIA. And of course, Trump mentioned that he would start a commission to look into the assassination of JFK and release all the files, something he didn't do in his first term, because he said, if you saw what I saw, you wouldn't release these files either. So what are in those files, and what will the CIA do to protect those files and to keep them from the American people? So we are in for turbulent times, and God knows what is going to happen, but fingers crossed. Hopefully they don't go too extreme in trying to prevent Trump from being president. So interesting times, and buckle up. Well, that is it for now. If you are new to my channel, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.